The worst sight is watching a small mistake destroy the watch you invested thousands of dollars in. So we're going to explore the right and wrong ways to take care of your watch. We'll talk about the mistakes people often make that could harm their valuable watches and even make them lose money. We'll also share some pro tips on how to keep your watch in great shape. So if you love watches and want to avoid making expensive mistakes, keep watching to learn how to protect your watch investment. Whether you've spent plenty of money on your watch, whether it's hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars, you probably want it to stay in good shape for a long time. Mechanical watches are generally durable and dependable, but that doesn't mean they can't wear out. To keep your watch looking and working great, follow these simple steps to maintain that brand new feeling. Don't leave the crown unscrewed. It might be tempting to unscrew the crown of your watch and pull it to adjust the time or keep it wound, but it's a good idea not to do that. Even if your watch doesn't have a screw-down crown, it's better to keep it pushed in snugly against the case. Why? Well, let me explain. Most likely your bedroom is near your bathroom, or maybe you even have an en-suite bathroom. The hot and moist air in there can be harmful to the inner workings parts of your watch, causing rust. The crown, when in its closed position, acts as a barrier to prevent this moisture from getting inside. If moisture does get in and your watch gets hot, you might see condensation forming inside the crystal, which isn't good. And worst of all, if you leave the crown pulled out, you might forget to push it back in, which can lead to problems. So it's a good practice to keep the crown snug against the case to protect your watch. Don't over-tighten the crown. While it's a good idea to keep the crown screwed in on water-resistant watches with a screw-down crown, you should also be careful not to tighten it too much. If you over-tighten it, you could damage the threads and get the crown stuck. However, this is pretty rare and usually requires force. What's more common is that if you screw it down too tightly, you might wear out the rubber gaskets that are there to keep your watch waterproof. These gaskets create a seal under pressure, but they don't need excessive force to work. The general advice is to tighten the crown just as much as you could if your fingers were numb, which is often referred to as finger tight. So avoid using too much force when screwing down the crown to keep your watch in good shape. Don't let your watch stay dirty. While it's not necessary to clean, wax and polish your watch every week, and in fact, it's generally not recommended to overdo the polishing, it is a good idea to give it a gentle cleaning every few months. You can use a soft bristled toothbrush, but make sure it's not the one you use for your teeth anymore. For watches that aren't water resistant, when I say damp, I mean just slightly moist, enough to feel a little cold to the touch. If you've ever spent a night in a tent, you'll know what that level of dampness feels like. Using this slightly damp toothbrush, give your watch a very gentle scrub to remove any dirt or mildew. This is especially important in areas with the moving parts like bracelet links because dirt can act like sandpaper, causing wear and tear. Don't try to reset a chronograph that's running. Some chronographs have a cool feature called a flyback, which lets you reset them while they're still running. When you reset a flyback chronograph, it instantly starts timing again, making it great for tracking sequential laps, for example. But if your chronograph isn't a flyback, it's not a good idea to press the reset button while it's running. Nowadays, most chronographs have a safety mechanism to prevent damage when you do this, but some vintage ones might not. Even with the safety mechanism, pressing the reset button during operation can feel like you need to apply more pressure, and it's better to avoid doing it unless you have a flyback chronograph. Don't put your watch on freestyle. Although this isn't an actual statistic, it's a situation many of us can relate to. Nearly 84% of watch-related accidents seem to happen within the first 10 seconds of putting on a watch. It's tempting to rush and quickly fasten it around your wrist, but a small mishap can result in disaster. Watches seem to have a natural inclination to end up on the floor, especially on hard, tiled surfaces. It doesn't take much for them to slip from your grasp. To avoid this, it's a good idea to pin the watch in place first, perhaps against a softly cushioned knee, before securely fastening the buckle. This simple precaution can save you from those heart-stopping moments when your watch takes a tumble. Don't set the date at midnight. Most watches equipped with a quick set date feature have a critical quirk you need to be aware of. If you try to use the quick set date function right around midnight when your watch is automatically changing the date, you're in for some potentially expensive trouble. It's a bit like shifting your car into reverse while driving on the highway, but instead of a loud bang and a frustrating wait for a tow truck in the rain, you might experience a tiny, costly pop and at least a month of frustration and embarrassment. The date on most watches starts changing slightly before midnight, and continues to change until just after midnight, which is longer than many celebrity relationships last. So, it's advisable not to use the quick set date feature a few hours before and after midnight. The manual for your specific watch should provide precise instructions. Just to be clear, I'm not saying you can't use the quick set date at midnight. You just need to ensure that the watch's time isn't close to midnight when you do it. Don't leave spatial awareness to chance. This advice is especially crucial for those who've invested a significant amount of money in a robust tool watch. In most cases, you don't need to adjust your behavior to accommodate your watch because any misjudgment could result in injury to your arm. However, when your watch measures over 13 millimeters in thickness, it's a good idea to recalibrate your spatial awareness, or you might end up damaging the watch's case. It might sound a bit obsessive, but it's similar to how after stubbing your little toe, you become acutely aware of how often it comes into contact with things. When you wear a thick watch, you'll notice how frequently your wrist grazes objects. Don't wear the bracelet too loose. While it's true that wrist swelling can be a real concern, I wouldn't recommend wearing your watch so loose that you could perform a duck shadow puppet with it. The trend of having your bracelet hang down to the floor like it's the 80s might be fashionable, but what's definitely not in style is premature bracelet wear. It can happen to anyone, and when it does, it can be quite embarrassing. To protect your bracelet, it's best to wear your watch just snug enough to have a little movement, maybe about an inch or so, but not too loose. If your hand turns blue and feels uncomfortable, then you've gone too far in the other direction. Don't keep your watches in a heap. I imagine that most of you who own more than one watch either lay them out side by side or store them in a watch box, which is a good practice. Watches appreciate their personal space, and having separate compartments keeps both your watches and you happy. However, there are some folks who tend to take off their watches and toss them all into the same drawer, piling them on top of each other. I mention this not for the majority who already know better, but for the few who might not realize that this isn't a good way to maintain your watches in good condition. It's almost like putting them in a rock tumbler. If you show respect for your watches by storing them properly, they'll return the favor by staying in great shape. Don't wear watches and bracelets together. While many of us may admire the style of former Top Gear host Jeremy Clarkson, I have to play the role of the practical party pooper and stress that wearing bracelets and watches on the same wrist simultaneously isn't the best idea. This is particularly true for bracelets with sharp, dangly or scratchy components. You wouldn't lay a handful of metal shards on a chair before sitting down, and you shouldn't subject your watch to a similar treatment. The only acceptable type of bracelet that can be worn alongside a watch is a rubber one. It's less likely to cause any damage or discomfort to your watch. That ends our video for today. We hope that you learned numerous tips that will guide you to take care of your watch. And if you want more videos like this one, don't forget to like and subscribe to Luxury Focus. See you again on the next video.